Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Calvary, starring Brendan Gleeson, Chris O'Dowd, Kelly Riley, and Aidan Gillen, directed by John Michael McDonough. Now, I remember going to theaters that was in a very independent movie theater, which I don't mind going to sometimes, but was it as good as I remembered? Let's get into it and we'll find out. In an Irish church on a Sunday, we meet Father James, played by Brendan Gleeson, at a confession as he's a Catholic priest, and his first confession is a man who was raped by a priest when he was 7 years old, as he killed the priest as he was a bad priest, as he was threatened by the man and wants to meet him in a week at a beach, and he thinks about the man's offer as one of the Catholics at his church is Jack Brennan, played by Chris O'Dowd, whom I've seen this actor in comedic roles, but most famous for playing a cop that falls in love with Kristen Wiig in Bridesmaids. But this is a dramatic role for him. And I do like this actor, and this character, as well as Father James as Brendan Gleeson, does good work in here, or Harry Potter. And last year, he played Donald Trump on the Showtime TV miniseries The Comey Rule. As here, he plays a priest, as I believe him as a priest. Like, he's believable in every movie I've ever seen him in. On Monday, he meets the head priest of Ireland as he goes to the train station and finds his daughter Fiona Lavelle, played by Kelly Riley, as he goes to a bar with her, and we see Dr. Frank Hart, played by Aidan Gillen, as I reviewed him before in the later two Maze Runner films as well as Bohemian Rhapsody. As she mouths off at the bar owner after giving her a drink, as these characters are well put together, James visits put Jack at the meat shop to talk about how his daughter Fiona got beat up either by her husband or Simon, who is an auto shop worker, as he asks him to not do it again, and he delivers a couple of books, and among other things. And why are the shots moving quickly? Like, quite quickly for that matter, as I don't understand what the fuck is happening at this point in the movie, other than Father James gets threatened and his daughter Fiona comes to visit him for his final week. But other than that, what is the plot of this movie? But the performances are good, as the shots are great to look at. But again, what is the plot of this movie? As it follows Father James around during his last week as he gets a gun from a man of the threat, because of the threat that might happen to him. We move on to Tuesday, and the doggy is barking. Sorry, I never got the name. As Fiona comes out while Father James is fishing outside, and the scene looks good, as it's shot and made good, but unfortunately not as great as I remembered. But I wasn't. It wasn't what I feared when I first saw it. Maybe that's what it was, which was, and I honestly thought Satan and an exorcism, but then, God, it's no horror movie. And thank God there was no more horror movie kind of things. Father James goes to a man's house as he takes a leak on a painting that belongs to the man, and Father James walks out, which was kind of amusing in a disgusting kind of way. Father James goes to the hospital as Dr. Hart tells him about the French couple whom the husband is in a coma, while the wife talks with Father James about having faith and talking about how life works, which is a nice scene. I'll give it that. And I'm thinking so far, this isn't a great movie as I remembered back in 2014. But I like how the small town in Ireland looks, as it looks good, but could be shot better than it is. I mean, it's goodly made, I'll say. On Wednesday, Father James and Fiona have a small picnic, and they go by the church as he hears a confession from Fiona, and the scene works fine. Father James goes to a cemetery where the old man owns it wants to be buried there. And next thing you know, he visits Freddie Joyce, played by Brendan Gleeson's son Domhnall Gleeson, before he was an ex machina in the three Star Wars sequels. And he's in prison, and Father James visits him in prison. And is he the biggest criminal in Ireland? which I will never understand, like in a lot of these scenes in this movie. But Domhnall does a does do fine work in this movie, in my opinion. Father James is at a bar where a party occurs, and some people are coked out while others are drunk out of their fucking minds as a fight briefly occurs. But we move on to Father James dancing with Fiona, and the next scene, he gets moody as his church burns down, and they call the fire department, and they won't get there in time as Thursday comes, and the police asks Father James who would burn down his church while he was being kind of an asshole at this point. A woman who got coked earlier in the film named Veronica is encountered by Father James as she tells him she wants to be an actress, which was the only shot that looks pretty in the whole movie, I'll say. Father James visits a lead priest about the church burning down and gets a visit by the rude cop whose name is Michael, as he wants to make a donation for 100,000 euros for the burning church. And I get why, but unfortunately the scene goes nowhere as this entire movie. While having lunch with Fiona, Father James is confronted by Veronica, and I get the impression Fiona doesn't like Veronica for all the shit she does in this whole movie. And she was the most annoying character in this whole movie anyways, as they go on a walk, and Fiona brings up the fact as she had her father back before he dies. But I don't want Father James to die by the end of the movie because we're not quite there yet. And Father James's cemetery visits the cemetery to give the old man medicine, and he gets home, he sees his doggy got killed off screen, which did depress me, but luckily it didn't happen on screen. Father James drops Fiona off at the beach as he briefly talks to a little girl, and her father comes off pretty threatening to Father James, which was an unconvincing scene. Nighttime comes, and Father James gets a drink and wants to be alone, and Jack torments him and comes off like an asshole to him, and he goes to the pool room as he encounters someone who needs help as he thinks Father James needs help himself, which was a little painful as the acting in that scene was kind of bad. Or was that the bad take this director can is that the best take this director can do? Hopefully not. Dr. Hart goes up to Father James rather menacing while telling him a terrible story as he acts like an ass himself. While Father James gets drunk, the bar owner kicks him out as he shoots up the bar and gets beat up, and that is a scene, that whole bar scene could have been cut out of this movie. I mean, I get why he's upset, but the scene should have been cut out, honestly. Saturday comes, and a man leaves the church because Father James got drunk and yelled and cursed at that guy, I'll say, as he says it's for the best, which makes sense after the scene before. Father James goes on an airplane to get away from life as he bumps into a woman whom I thought was Veronica. I could be wrong. As he gets to where he wants to go, but he's back home on Sunday preparing for his death as a priest as he brings the gun he bought earlier in the film and goes down to the beach as he bumps into the cemetery man and talks with Fiona on the phone. He throws his gun in the water as this is kind of a boring film, but I have 13 minutes of the movie left as he talks with the cop for a brief moment and gets to the beach, and a child witnesses Jack having a gun and points it at Father James and shoots him in the stomach and kills him, which honestly I didn't see that coming as I didn't hear the voice at first, but I sort of get it now. And Jack is in prison for what he did, and Fiona comes and visits him in prison, and the movie ends without them saying anything to each other as the ending was banal and didn't make much sense. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 4.8 out of 10. I wanted to like this movie better than I do now, But the reason I'm giving this the mild non-recommendation is because, other than the fact Father James was threatened and Fiona visiting him, I don't have a clue on what the fuck this movie is about. Don't get me wrong, the shots and acting are kinda good, and so is the movie was made good, and it's pretty to look at, but unfortunately not as great as the script is all over the place. At the end of the day, I'm not keeping the Blu-ray copy I had because I mildly didn't like it, as there was a lot of scenes that just weren't necessary, as the film unfortunately was kind of boring. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for this review. And until then, may you rest in peace, Father James. May you rest in peace.